Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new series from Super Progressive, where we explore the history of underground dance music. Now, normally on our video podcast, we're interviewing DJs who were pioneers of the underground sounds of their era. So far, we've interviewed people like Paul Oakenfold, Anthony Papa, Danny Tenaglia, Sander Kleinenberg, Stacy Pullen, Dave Seaman, and Steve Lawler. Now, we realize that the history of underground dance music is such a bigger story than just the DJs. And one thing that we've been able to build is a really strong relationship with our followers in the comments. And we actually get some really good discussions about what the scene was really like. So for this podcast series, we're actually going to be interviewing other fans and followers of the super progressive community and fans and followers of underground dance music to talk a little bit about how they fell in love with the music and what the scene was like when they first became interested in underground culture. And we're just so excited for this because anytime we have an opportunity to just learn more about, the stories that haven't been told yet, when it comes to this music that we love, we're all ears, and we think this is just a massive opportunity to learn a lot more. So we're really stoked. So our first episode today, we have with us, a follower that's been with us since day one. He shares great comments on our Instagram. He's always super supportive and offers some great ideas. So we're really, really stoked to have Danny Jarvis with us on the podcast today. Welcome, bro.
Hey, how you doing, Will? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit so both we can get to know you better and the listeners can as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Will. My name's Danny Jarvis, and I run another online community called Progressive House UK over in the UK. And that's a community similar with a love of progressive house. And I want to kind of share in that nostalgia and the modern day era of it. I run something else, a DJ myself. I run something called Lost In. That was something that's run for the last 2 years through the pandemic. And yeah, I'm just generally a massive, super fan of progressive house music, and have lived and grown with this music since I very first heard it. Electronic music has always been a love of mine, so it's great to share this passion, hook up with you guys, and yeah, hopefully provide you with some stories back from the day.
Yeah, man. We're just so stoked to hear what you have to say. And I guess to start, we'll just take it all the way back to the beginning. For my first question, I'm just very curious in when was the first time you listened to underground dance music? Like, when was the first time you participated in the underground, and when was the first time you went to a club to listen to this music, or a rave? I'm not sure which was first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a great question. Growing up, I was born in '78. I was growing up. I had an older brother and sister, so both 8 years older than me. So, I'm 8 years old and they're 16, so they're going out, and the kind of music that was around my house, coming out of their bedrooms, was from my sister, kind of Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, all that vibe, and then from my brother, kind of deeper sound, the Smiths, Depeche Mode. And I think it's easy to say that you quite quickly become influenced by the sounds you hear, and I think the electronic sound, especially the Depeche Mode, and to a certain extent some of the cleaner Madonna sounds, really sort of ignited a passion of mine. My father was massively into classical music, so it's not that I'm into that, but clearly there's a musical love somewhere in our family. And I guess once they've kind of left home, and these influences leave you, you're young, you come into sort of secondary school, you do get a bit more curious, you do get a bit more intrigued, and a lot of the kids my age would have these older brothers, and we'd get given these tapes, and this is how it starts. It starts in the playground. It's as simple as that, and you have your little Sony Walkman that you might have got for Christmas, and you've got your batteries in it, your AA batteries, and you and your mate sneak off to a corner of the playground with one earphone each on the wire, and you listen to these really crackly, really poor quality tapes of music that's just like, what's this? And one of the sort of, key memories of this era is that, you would get this mixture of music, really kind of like hardcore, hardcore really, hardcore rave music. That's definitely the term. And it would be a hodgepodge. It'd be a crackly recording. You normally had it on like a 90-minute tape where you'd have 45 minutes on one side of one thing, 45 minutes on the other. And, the school rules, the playground rules are that, you can't let your friend just copy this tape. You've got to have permission from a higher authority. My big brother says, I can't lend this tape to anybody. I can't copy it. And this is why you get around in groups and listen to it on one earphone. You're not allowed permission to record this recording. The irony of which is that it's been recorded about 1 million times, and that's why it's such poor quality. But that's your access. That's your access point. And this becomes your need. You've heard this a couple of times. You learn the songs. There isn't many. If I'm to bring this to life, you'd get a mixture of something like Gat the Core Passion, and you might get Bomb Scare, Two Bad Mice, mixed with a kind of mixture of music. And really, what sort of happens from there, I guess, is that as the scene and the culture changed in the 90s, and it's happening around you, you're not quite aware of it at sort of 11, 12, but these older brothers and these older influences keep you abreast of this music. Your friend either nicks the tape off him and does illegally record it, you all, and you all get a copy, and there's the thirst for more. And the kind of hardcore scene, I guess, captured my imagination a little bit. You've got back then Jungle. It kind of went into happy hardcore. You had these sort of slightly different versions, and it really was about what you could get hold of. That I've got to stress that it was about what you could get hold of at that age. And yeah, I guess you used the term underground, and this was some rave, this was something that happened, and your imagination was just fired by these horns or this sort of slight crowd music or this urban myth around it. That, this was a rave down in such and such, and there was 10,000 people there. All very mysterious and exciting. And I guess as the 90s sort of went along, the quality of the music got better. You got over wanting to hear the same music, probably mixed by different DJs, and you wanted to progress. And really, that's the fork in the road, is kind of getting a bit older, maybe taking things off in your own direction. Again, the playground's sort of essential in bringing something new to your group of friends. I've heard this, my brother's got this. And my brother was in Manchester, so he had the Manchester sound. So he would bring me back these obscure Hacienda tapes, which were just gold. They were gold. There's another place in Wigan that a friend, Andy Hurst, his brother would have Wigan Pier tapes. Wigan is a town in the northwest of England, not too far from Manchester. And it used to be a huge Northern Soul influence. 70s, 80s Northern Soul was huge in England, very much in the north of England. So I guess a lot of these clubs, a lot of these venues naturally progressed into sort of raves, hardcore, house music nights. So you'd get these collection of tapes. And that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
I'm sure you remember, like everybody kind of does, your first night going to the club and hearing this music. Can you kind of walk us through that experience for you?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there's a mixture here of how loud or how you hear this music and the technology that was available at the time to play this. I mentioned sort of Sony headphones, Sony Walkmans, and they sort of got a bit better. This is still really not quite Sony Discmans, so the compact disc hadn't really come out. So you're still dealing with tapes. So the best probably music quality you could hear was maybe a original tape from the hardcore companies, was different companies like Fantasia. There was these different companies that would sell these tape packs. So the quality of the sound was starting to get a bit better. You're no longer copying off your friends. You'd send away off the back of a magazine. This is really like crazy, but you'd get your pocket money, you'd save your pocket money, you'd go to your parents and you'd tell them that they needed, you'd give them your pocket money and they would write you a check. You'd send this check off in the post to some faraway land where Fantasia would then 16 weeks later send you these rave tapes back in this pack. So, the reason I'm saying this is because up to now, this music is in your ears. You'd kind of have to whiz forward, really, probably a few years to kind of around about 1990, sort of 3/4. Now being sort of 15, you can kind of get away with stuff. So my big brother, still living in Manchester, was quite into the scene, and I think he himself culturally was probably a little bit counterculture. It's to be remembered very much in England that the rave sort of scene was a counterculture movement in the 90s. So it was very underground. That word underground, it was. This is way before the sort of commercialization. So, I was suddenly in a position where I could go to the Hacienda with my brother. Now, having had the tapes in my ears, very much being a northern lad, that the Hacienda was known. So this was like super exciting. This was just like super exciting. You have your fake ID, your brother's going to get you in, you're shitting your pants because you're like, what if I don't get in? You're going to ruin everybody's night, and how embarrassed are you going to be? Because you're still that like kid, you're still this kid who's got this like little ego, and as much as you're buzzing to get in, you've got all this fear and everything. So we go along, and the premise, of course, is that you're going to visit your brother in Manchester. Your parents have got no idea what this older brother's got in store for you. And the good thing, the sort of thing to remember is I'm sort of 15, my brother's 23, so he's in his prime. You don't look at it like that. You think he's much older and more mature, but he's in his prime. So, there's just everything about the Manchester scene's kind of crazy. This mad guy turns up at the doorstep in a taxi. He's been on drugs all night. It's just a mad mank. And you get in the car and he like literally goes at 70 miles an hour as fast as he can through the city centre of Salford into Manchester. And you're like, who's this guy? What's he doing? He's terrifying me. And he's on drugs because he's just trying to do as many shifts as he possibly can. So he's chattering 10 to the dozen, screeches up, pulls it up outside Dry Bar. It's a place called Dry Bar, where you go, and it's like the pre-club bar where you go and get the tickets. So all this is all really quite new to me. And we go in, and there's a big set of speakers, and it's the pre-warm-up bar. There's this kind of slow house music, quite deep. You buy your tickets. It's all sort of quite sketchy, and you have this drink, and you hang around there for about an hour, and the buzz builds, and the crowd builds a little bit, and then off you go to the Hacienda. And it's a revered place. I'm certainly not going in its sort of golden period. I'm more now in 93, and this is tailing off. But we're going to see Graham Park, and we're going to see Jeremy Healy of all people, and it's the Cream tour. So it's a very early Cream tour at the Hacienda. So it's two huge giants, really, an older existing giant and a future giant coming together. And we go up to the door, and there's some like big stain on the floor, and I'm like, what's that? And the buzz is, it's Manchester, and the bouncer got shot the night before. And you're just like, what? What? This is kind of like, should I be here? Half thinking, is this real? Well, that looks pretty real. Anyway, you go through the doors. And actually, this is well worth noting. There's a Sander Kleinenberg CD. And I think it's his Sander Kleinenberg, This Is Everybody. It might be volume 1. They have this part of that CD. They have a queue lined up, and the intro of the Sander Kleinenberg is two guys in the queue up, and you can hear the sort of vibration noise of the music inside, and the doors, these metal doors, and you get this, and then the doors open, whack, and the sound is just like wham, whammo, and this, you're just like, what the hell is this? It's sort of what you imagine, it's sort of not. And you're very aware of yourself, you're very aware of what's going on, and you're thinking, oh, it's quite loud, and you get near the dance floor, and the hacienda had this kind of like street scene. That's how it was set out, like it was a kind of street scene. It had these bollards around the outside of the dance floor, so you could kind of walk around and go on. And I was quite keen to get quite stuck in and get on the dance floor. And I think at this point, it was probably one of the warm-up DJs. It wasn't even Graham Park playing, but it's just this house sound, this very distinctive house sound that you've been listening to on these earphones, and then all of a sudden it's just all around you, totally surrounding you. Kind of dub stuff, garage, house. That's kind of what you got those days, garage and house. And yeah, you just all of a sudden, here it is, I'm in it, sort of pinch yourself. And yeah, there's just some mad stuff goes on, and you're not quite prepared for it. One of the things that caught me off guard or totally got me excited and hooked from the off was this thing where the music sort of stops and it breaks down, and then there's this massive build up where just the beat comes back in and everybody starts reacting and like hands in the air. And of course, you've never experienced this with your eyes. You've heard some stuff maybe on these cassette tapes you've been listening to. So when this happens and you're there, I mean, that's it. You're baptized, your hands are in the air, and everybody goes mad. The lights go off, the beat comes back in, and whoomp, there's this like euphoria for like 20 seconds as it falls back into place, and everything happens. You'll get all this dub, and then all of a sudden a vocal will sort of range out, and everybody's like singing along, and it was just mad. Because what's keen to remember here as well is that this was an era where there wasn't all these big anthems as such. The sort of major anthems that were 91, 92, 93, they weren't played like you'd expect. So you had floor fillers, which actually later on became anthems. They filled the floor. So it was quite different. But that was a real good baptism of fire. The Hacienda, Graham Park, Jeremy Healy, Cream Tour. I feel very lucky that I was able to be sort of taken by my older brother to this monumental evening.
Yeah, it's iconic. Like I couldn't think of a more epic first night out. I've obviously never even been in the Hacienda. I've traveled to Manchester to see it, but only from the outside. But the movie 24 Hour Party People kind of gives you such a good idea of what that feeling must have been like. It's one of my favorite films.
Yeah, and there is side stories to that. These nights that happen. There are some of the Manchester United team. There are some of the sort of local / regional TV stars that are there. The guy who owned it was often there, and there was often cool heads sort of hanging around the bar. There was a real mixture of people, and that was clubbing all over, really. It was this mixture, a real mix of people, and a real sort of, I mean, Manchester, it's got its reputation, and the Hacienda was by then, a little bit troubled. Clubs invariably have problems with drugs. That's unfortunately one of the parts of the scene. But it's just such an iconic place to be, and where the DJ booth is, sort of overlooking you, and that's very iconic as well. This kind of haloed DJ, up in this box, and of course, you all know. I'm going to talk to all the DJs that you've talked to that they were more shy. This was before the superstar DJ. This was not somebody throwing records into the crowd and spinning it backwards and shouting down a mic, or some of the sort of crazy stuff that happens in the modern commercial era. These are shy guys who love music, who are playing it, and they're not there to be the limelight. The music's the star, and that was really good. I mean, Will, from this point, you're hooked. That's it now. When can I get back? Where can we go next? The irony, of course, as well of being 15 is you can't wait to take your mates when you go back to school. It's crazy. You shouldn't have been doing all this stuff, and that just makes it even sweeter. You're just like, guess what I did? You'll never guess what I did. People are just like looking at you going, what? Yeah, total buzz.
So, you go to the club a few times, and I'm very interested to learn about not not thinking about genre because this era of music kind of precedes genre of electronic music, but what parts of club culture did you find yourself gravitating towards? What part about a club night, whether it be like the journey of the journey that the music takes you on, the meeting different people on the same dance floor, making friends through the club. What did you find yourself within club culture, fashion? Like, what did you find yourself within club culture really becoming fascinated with or gravitating towards?
Yeah, that's a good that's a great question. It's quite a it's an interesting question because you will get lots of different answers, even though we are primarily talking about the same umbrella topic. I think for me, I quickly became quite interested in wanting to mix the music, to to create it, to do something. Um, I think this sounds over cliched now because so many people are DJs, but you really didn't have a lot of people who DJs back then. You didn't. It was totally sort of geeky, nerdy thing to do, and it literally was going around mates' houses. You'd all buy these records. You'd sort of stand behind each other, taking turns playing on the record players that you could afford. Two of my oldest friends, I'm still friends with today, went out at the age of sort of 14, 15. Around this time that I was having this experience, they were also going to sort of local gigs and doing the same sort of thing. Again, one of the lads was slightly older, so he could easily get into the scene. And we would buy these records, or probably they would buy these records, and we would queue up, one behind each other, playing records in their bedroom on Thursday nights with the parents saying, turn it down. And I think once you cross over into this kind of hearing the music and liking it and hearing it on tapes, finding it and sourcing it and going to a record shop, buying it, buying more tapes. I was very keen to almost get really cracking on a library. It sounds mad saying it today because we're so used to this language of talking about a library of music or having digital music. I would have rows and rows of tapes. I would never tape over them. They became tapes that were important and classified, and I would use the flyers from the clubs and fold them up and cut them so that the tape boxes were all branded in this way. When you went to Manchester, you would pick up all of the flyers from Hacienda, or the people from Liverpool had brought over to Hacienda, sort of, you know, places where clubbers would pick up flyers for Cream would be the same way they pick up the Hacienda, and there's this cross pollination. So whenever you went over, you would collect as many flyers as possible, bring them, give them your mates. And it was absolutely common practice to stick them on your walls. And we're talking about, some of the really kind of early rave posters mixed with like quite clean designs, the way the clubs were trying to go. Your walls would be covered in these posters. This was quite normal. I mean, we laugh when we see some of the old pictures of our friends' bedrooms because you just think parents must have been going, "What are these kids doing?" But it's literally floor to ceiling in flyers. So you see, physically you immersed yourself in it. But I think for me, to return to your question, is that I became quite keen to become some sort of unbeknownst expert in knowing it, understanding the music, finding parts of it that I really liked. When you get given a tape by a certain DJ and you sort of gravitate to that DJ, you want more of that DJ. You are open to hearing other ones, but you tend to just sort of have an allegiance. Now that's commonplace, I would have thought still. And we haven't really come to the seminal stuff. I guess we'll talk about. Maybe you'll ask me, but this kind of having these tapes, this kind of getting into a sound, liking a certain DJ, liking the music they play. A lot of early sort of 90s stuff was quite piano based, so it would be quite happy. There was influences of garage music that was like Graham Park. I still liked some of my hardcore stuff. LTJ Buchan back in the day was playing just as good music as he does today, but he was doing it in a scene where he was just a billion times different. So I think I think this element of going, oh, what are they doing? And, you would record, it's mad, Will. You would record music off the radio. You would have these pirate stations, and you would get your aerial as best you could without any hiss, and you would kind of record bits of these pirate stations onto tapes. So it doesn't take a leap of faith to kind of say, well, I like that with that. And before you know it, you're mixing on a tape, two tape decks, and you're literally pressing the record buttons using the mic on the tape deck to record the other thing you're doing, and you're trying to make mixtapes yourself. And I was obsessed with that straight off. I was like, well, I can make my own mixtapes. I mean, just these things sound so normal now, but they weren't then. And you were like, oh, what do you think of this? And you'd be like, oh. And you'd kind of mix these tapes yourself, very rudimentary. And then back to front, going to the vinyl. I mean, we were all just hopeless at vinyl. You're hopeless at it. It takes hours of practice in your mate's bedroom. They're all at different speeds, and you're still playing like a hardcore tune, and then you're trying to play a house one. It's just a madness. But it's completely obsessive. You just become obsessed with it.
Awesome. Thank you. I mean, thank you for breaking it down like that. It's so cool to hear. So, you're going to these club nights. You're really like becoming engulfed in the culture of the scene, from everything from the club nights to the tapes to mixing the music. What were the DJs that you remember either seeing on stage or hearing on the tapes, and you're like, that's the sound that I'm about, or that's where I like that shit, like, what were the DJs that kind of played in a style and in a sound that you really remember liking initially, or what were the records that you liked a lot? Like, I'm very curious in that.
Yeah. Good question. This fits very well with my modern ethos, I guess, is that even back then, devoid of the kind of quality of the tapes you might listen to on the playground moving forward, the production of music, the sound quality itself, was quite important to me. My dad, for want of a better word, was really into hi-fi. And I remember he was quite a big Queen fan, and he came back one day, 88, 89 maybe, and brought these massive speakers and played Queen at just a phenomenally loud level on these speakers. And I think it was I Want to Break Free. And I remember the clarity of it on these big Kef speakers, how clear it was, the beat, everything. And once you kind of sort of started to dabble in records, vinyl, tapes, buying the tapes, sending away and getting the original tapes, playing a piece of vinyl, you started to get quite an idea of how the sound sounded, literally the quality of the sound. And I think from early on, I started to develop quite a taste for very crisp, clean sounding stuff. And the reason I mention that, and I'm not trying to avoid your question, is that when then you listen to DJs and you listen to the music they played plus how they maybe mixed it, there was an era where you were kind of a bit forgiving about DJs' mixing abilities. So they may have got 90% of the record slightly in time. They had to do it quite quickly. It wasn't an easy job. And even in the big clubs when it's very, very loud, I could pick out the quality of this music was slightly different. Now, where I'm kind of going with this is the sort of arrival of CDs. And when the CD kind of arrived properly for house music, it meant that even by having it on CD, it probably reached a certain commercial level. So you would go to the clubs, you would come back from the clubs, and you would have that after hours type experience. So, I have it in my hand because I wanted to kind of remind myself is the future sound of London. You'd put this on when you came back to a club. I came back from a club, and this was very much in the chill out, left field category. left field before left field with the band, this left field category. And the quality was just it's totally up there. You'd be listening to it on CD, your ears might be slightly ringing from the club, and you'd hear this sound. So all of a sudden, you catapulted forward into going, this sounds amazing. Like, what else is out there? And I kind of quite liked the Fantasia House collection that came out. Again, you saved up your pocket money, you bought these CDs. If you were lucky enough to have a CD player, you could play it. But the big change, and this will be absolutely across the board for nearly everybody who's into the music I'm into, was Renaissance 1, Sash and Digweed.
You have it right here.
It was like the most mysterious album when it appeared, because there it was in kind of Woolworths. This is Woolworths, it was where you got a lot of your music, Woolworths and HMV, and it was this mysterious looking thing with all this Sistine Chapel artwork on. Renaissance with Sash and Digweed, and you were like, oh yeah, I might have seen this in some of my music magazines that I've been getting. And what the hell is this? And you'd reach it down from the shelf, it didn't have any of the music on the back. So it was just like this total, like, what's this? And as people started, it was very expensive at the time as well. I remember this. It was expensive, man. You were like, how am I going to afford that? You literally might have saved up like 2 or 3 pocket monies on pounds to buy this music. And, invariably somebody gets it. Right? Normally, to save money, you get it on tape. So it's like £13.99 on tape. It was like £20 on CD. So, yeah, this Sash and Digweed music was just this quality, just this sound quality and this epicness. And it had these elements of the kind of chill out stuff involved. The big long intro with left field at the beginning kind of starts with these big intros, and it was just this totally different music. It was no longer like, it was this proper mix of styles, but the quality was just level up, like complete level up, like mind-blowing. What is this? And that was it. 3 tapes, back to back, just obsessed with it. Like, what the hell? And there wasn't a lot of it around, so it was not as if you kind of got bored of it. You didn't. You rinsed it and rinsed it and rinsed it and rinsed it. Your tape's chewed up. Oh my God, I can't. What am I going to do? I can't play this tape anymore. I'm going to have to buy it again or nick my mate's one and swap it or do something with it on the hand. But this quality, this, like you've said it, journey, was like all of a sudden, hang on, this isn't just music anymore. This is not just like somebody who's got a load of good tunes and put them together. This is like craftsmanship. This is now a level up. And this is probably made well before I think it was called progressive house. Or maybe this was the start of it. It's to be argued. But that album, let me tell you, Will, was just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Bold, different, long, it's just, yeah, it still stands as probably my favorite ever mix. One of the greatest mix compilations ever, hands down.
So what else? I saw you brought a couple of albums into the studio. What else do we have here?
Yeah, it's nigh on impossible, I think, to talk about the early days of progressive house, or even the sort of more melodic styles, without mentioning Sash and Digweed. And 1994, when that came out, the second edition of that was Digweed did his own. So Digweed, 1995 Renaissance 2 came out, very, very different sound. Still maybe listening to different things, bits of hardcore still, but once you'd had an album like that delivered and you'd got used to the name John Digweed, and the second album of that came out, it was just a game changer. Now I'm like 17, now you can drive, now you are taking yourself to Cream in Liverpool. You're now really listening to that CD in the car with your friends as you go to Liverpool. Then you go and see John Digweed in Liverpool, and he plays a load of music, and some of the tunes he may still be playing. This is back in the day when there wasn't the millions and millions and millions of tunes. So this just became next level. This was just like next level stuff where these DJs would play this stuff, particularly your Sasha, your Digweed, and not at that stage a little bit Dave Seymour was starting to cross into that sound. But there really wasn't anybody playing this music that was this journey. Yes, it contained some of the big hits of the time, but it was this strange journey. It was this layers and layers of music and sounds, way beyond just the house sound with a vocal and a throwaway kind of breakdown and then start again. This gospel voice, anything could happen. Tribal beats kind of in their early stages, very electronic noises, BT when he was at the height, just like you came away just going, what have I heard? What have we heard? Like, what is this? And, now, of course, what you're doing is you're going to the night and you've got much more access to the music. And, at the age of sort of 17, now you're like able to travel. So it's like, where are these guys on next? You're waiting for their next CD, but you're wanting to capture them wherever you can. And I guess that was a golden era of that music, sort of 95 to 97 was the real complete era. And then came in 1996, Northern Exposure, which just totally and utterly, for me, blew the doors off everything. It was just like all the stuff I explained about going back after the club and then something else. And again, totally lucky that when that toured, Northern Exposure toured, I was then living in Manchester in 1996. So I got to see their tour in the Hacienda. Oh my God. Sasha and Digweed, Northern Exposure tour in the Hacienda. It was just like, now we're talking. And, this was like 10 times the speakers. They'd ship 10 times the speakers in. And they just played this music all night that was like, this is now, I'm getting a bit of a tingle, but I went with a mate. We were at uni together at the time. We went to this night and we were dancing in the street for the 45 minutes. Like they opened the doors on the side and people just dancing in the street. They didn't want to go home. It was like, no.
Where's the music coming from?
Oh, it was just like, they had to turn the main sound system off. They just left some speaker on at the back and it was just playing and everybody was dancing sort of in the street by the door, didn't want to go home. It was mental. And, the next thing was, where are they touring next? Oh, it's at Cream. Oh my God, it's at Cream in the Courtyard. Right, we're going there. And that was it, man. This is where you'll probably interview other people who, especially from the UK, will just say, that is it. It was no longer about what should we do on the weekend. You knew, it's this and it's this and it's this. How are we going to get there? Who's driving? What are we going to do? How are we going to organise it? There's an all-nighter on. Oh my God, we're definitely going. It just became totally what you did. It's ironic, really, when I think back, because especially sort of sixth form years, I was often playing schoolboy rugby as well. So you'd like play schoolboy rugby with your school all Saturday, and everybody would be sort of saying, "Are you coming to the pub tonight?" And there'd be like 3 or 4 of us going, "No, we're off to Liverpool, we're off to Cream." And they'd be like, "You're really weird. What are you doing that for?" We'd be like, "Because it's amazing." So it's just, it's totally mad when you think about how it was positioned next to your sort of normal life. And I never looked back. I was, talking about that night in Northern Exposure that had started to collect records more and more then, and very quickly was sort of DJing and doing the two things. You knew Oasis existed, but you didn't listen to them. You listened to Sasha and Digweed and you listened to house music. You didn't join in with the rest of culture. It was just how it was.
That's so funny you say that, because if I was a kid that age, knowing how much I love Oasis now, and I really didn't discover progressive house or Oasis until, well into my 20s. Not that I didn't know what Oasis was, but they're literally one of my all-time favorite bands. I don't know which side of the line I'd fall there because it's probably my two all-time favorite things relating to music, but that's really funny you say that. Going back to what you were saying about Northern exposure, there's a really cool moment on the mix. It's the transition between I'm Free and Ultraviolet. And I think it's on
Oh yeah,
CD1, but like
CD1.
two-thirds of the way through. What I like so much about that moment is that they're pulling from tracks that kind of buck the culture of exclusive releases for these very prestigious mix compilations. They were pulling those tracks from 1990, I think, which is just
Yeah,
like an awesome
yeah.
nod back to the era that they came from.
I mean, I know you've done your research, and you know that um your writing and the content you produce is excellent. As you said, fans of what you do read these with delight. And when you research back and you looked around the time, I think the kind of idea behind this was that Sasha Digweed wanted to bring forth to people this sound that they played not in the club, and there was this very real kind of mixture of tracks that they wanted to bring to the forefront that was potentially not that heard or not that well known or within their record collection. And yeah, quite rightly you say, the first CD spans it went backwards, which was sort of quite different for the era, but not that you would be able to tell. And again, the strength of their mixing, programming, this is what transpired, is this mad sort of nod back to kind of Future Sound of London, these kind of different rhythms and slower rhythms, much more down tempo, that were normally found on like a chill out CD or very much in the left field section of the record shop kind of thing. And that was delightful because that bit, this long intro for the Morgan King thing, it goes on forever, and then just all of a sudden, boom, and it dropped, and whoa, what's happened? You're off, and then the beat starts. And what better way to lead into what is the second CD, which is almost that continuation of the linear journey of like holy shit, we are off, like we're off. But you've highlighted like a perfect moment. There's this beautiful pause, isn't there, within Morgan King's, just this almost stop, and like totally different mood starts, and it's just total tingles. It's just the perfect
I have the
marriage of
melody in my head.
the perfect marriage of a brilliant record and a perfect place to put it. This is the art of DJing. You've put it there for a reason. It's not just happened,
Yeah.
and yeah, the kites, the rehashed older lyric, it's just exactly right. It's just a perfect moment of like mixed compilation history. Yeah, you've now. I'm going to say it because it's just for me. The second CD, Wave Speech into Evolution Phoenix, is just one of the single most magical things. You go from this dark track with this brooding, slow build up, bam, 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 and Evolution's tune comes in. Absolutely, the build up before the tune starts, the sort of intro of the music swirls and swirls and swirls, and then wallop, you get this funky beat on top of this dark rhythm, and you're just off. You're off into a completely different mood zone. And that record, Evolution Phoenix, that's one of the records I kept out of my record collection. When I finally sold it, I pinched a few out, but I've got Evolution Phoenix. It's probably my favorite progressive house record ever. If not that, then you know, kind of maybe Calling Your Name by BT, or that. But just that part of those two CDs, you've nailed it. They're just phenomenal.
That breakdown that you're talking about, when it's like free and then it's I literally died, dude.
It's like it's touching all your neuro parts, isn't it? Like a massage, like a head massage. I am free. It's like your shoulders relax. It's proper. There's a song in there and they're called Out of Body Experience, but it is that. It is that. It's just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm gonna go and listen to it like later. I've got to hear it. But it is, yeah. That ability to take one mood and put the next one next to it is, it's just what it's about.
So yeah, I guess, my last question for you. This has been an awesome conversation and we learned so much. Is like, what's like the defining memory, series of memories, defining feeling from you, for you, that you'd like to, whatever part of your experience with club culture, that you really either identified with or just know your shit about, or you're just really passionate, electronic music culture, underground dance music culture is this huge thing. What's one thing that you'd like to kind of nerd out on or share with us that like really means a lot to you within this great landscape?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and please excuse me if I kind of break it down a little bit into a couple of sections. So as a music fan of this music, as a listener, and a continued fan, I think the sort of wisdom, if you like, I'd like to share with people who maybe haven't discovered it yet, or maybe are into electronic music but haven't quite discovered this body of work or these type of DJs. Your Hernan Catanios, your Guy J's, your South American DJs. Not so much the sound Sasha plays now, but certainly Digweed, is that there is a patience to this music. It is not an instant payoff. This world of completely dopamine addicted behavior, scroll on, quick buzz, TikTok, everything quick, get the hit, next. It's not that. If I was going to impart this wisdom and say what it is I love about it as a listener, is that you can use this patience and you're rewarded. The music is a journey. Any podcast you listen to today about business or health or any of this stuff, they'll all tell you it's about the journey, not the end. It is about the journey you're on. And it is. You don't need all of the tricks. But let's not kid ourselves. There is an art to it. So that brings me to the second bit, really, which is what I try and do with my DJing, with my music, which is to use these different influences, use this kind of, progressive for me is a philosophy. I know we've talked about this before. You've had interviews with other DJs, but it's true. Progressive is a philosophy. It's not just a style. It's a way of thinking. It is all these elements, these huge layers that get added together, where the two tunes meet, they create their own tune. And all of a sudden the mix is as important as the tracks themselves. And that's hugely important. There's a part on Northern Exposure on the second CD, Northern Exposure 1 on the second CD. And I think it's either Evolution into the Light, Dusk, or it's Mellow, but there's this part where the mix almost becomes more than the two tunes together. And this is an essential part and art of the mixing, is that when a DJ plays, there's an element where you can't tell what record it is. Well, that's some of the magic, but not so much that it's boring, but these subtle elements. Your classic sort of in your head progressive house tune sort of starts and builds these layers, and that's very much where it is. And for me as a listener and a DJ, it's exploring these layers and energies. This is energy. You ask any big DJ, what they're trying to do. And from my time playing in front of crowds, you're controlling the energy of a room. So once you're in that zone and you're not wanting to be the main focus, the DJ is not wanting to be the main focus of what's happening, and lets the music be a star, and you get creative. Off goes the music, and you're creating this energy. Not everybody wants to be going mental every 5 minutes and getting all these big track after track after track, hands in the air, you know. So that's another side of it, is this layer and this art. And then probably lastly for me, what is it I love about it, or what is it I'm continuing to try and do, is this idea of putting these concepts together. So I like to explore, and I read different books, mental health, productivity, call it what you will, stuff about science fiction, stuff about AI, anything that kind of interests me that's happening culturally. I go back to the past, listening to different philosophers, people, and I go and I find these odd clips, and I like these sound bites, and I find these conversations that I've listened to on podcasts or from the past, or I've researched somebody, and I like to take those and then I like to put them in with my music. I like to layer them over, and there's nothing nicer than the sounds of certain progressive music with these sort of voices over. You know, this isn't a new thing. I'm not trying to make out as if I'm doing something that people haven't done before, but to try and make my music, to try and make my version or my vision of progressive house music, is to kind of come up with this theme, so that you're not only going on this journey throughout the set of music I play and these different moods that I'm guiding you through, but also create this message, so that it's not instant. You don't just listen to it and that's it. You want to go back. You want to hear it again. You want to explore that mix. You want to explore that section, that range of emotions. What did that guy say? What was going on there? And for me, that's the art. That's the art bit. And I think, you know, I'm pretty confident of saying that with progressive house music, or people that play this style or use this philosophy will have this in mind. And that's what for me makes it different. And I just, you know, we chatted, you and I, before, about why is it that it seems to be so popular in South America and it's not so popular in Britain anymore? It's got to be a cultural thing. You know, we're not patient. The UK are not a patient nation. We ain't patient. We're trend led. We want quick hit. We think, and we like to be seen as the leaders of trends and on the forefront. But I think we've lost some of the old school. And you look at South America, who regularly, maybe obviously the weather helps. The UK is not known for its great weather, but tens of thousands of people just dancing to this music, this melodic music. DJs like Nick Warren over there, he commands audiences over there. He never gets in the UK anymore, even though he was like a pioneer of the sound at Cream. We used to go and see him every weekend. Paul Oakenfold in the courtyard, Nick Warren in the main room, and they were playing this sound. But that was crammed in a club indoors. You look at the modern era, and the South Americans are just lapping this up. You know, over in America where you are, different areas have got these spaces that they use. And I just think that's sad. And I think it's a cultural thing. I think we are more impatient. And this music is a beautiful, patient, and yet rewarding music and sound. I just, honestly, like we are now, I love talking about it. There's not many people you can, but when you find them, it's gold. It's golden.
Should we talk a little bit about the mix that the mix project that we're working on together?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so Danny actually reached out to us with an awesome idea to kind of just collaborate on a mix, and not me mixing, it's all Danny's mixing, but just kind of through our conversations, give the mix a perspective, give it some context. I think maybe I'll talk with Danny like on a specific type of recording for the mix, or maybe like a super progressive release of the mix. Like it features like a brief interview at the beginning to kind of understand the vibe of the mix, what your intentions are, like what goals you set for yourself with the mix, or if you're just like letting it rip, like doing your thing. But whatever, I think the context of the mix coming up is going to give us a lot of great stuff to talk about. And hopefully our conversation only adds to the journey, that you're about to take us on. So I'm really stoked about that. I'm not sure. I hope you're stoked too.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think the challenge that I like to put myself under is to create something unique. We again, for want of repeating myself, we are in a bit of a throwaway culture, and sometimes that's a shame. That there is great new music out all the time, and there is certainly millions of producers out there and millions of mixes. But I think when you get a partnership like this, where there's a lot of care and love in the air for this music and this project, and you probably recognize that the audience is definitely matched to what you want. This is one of the joys of the online community, us finding each other, reaching out and working on projects like this. For me, it's like I said, it's not about fame or a million listens. It's about the right people listening to the music. And, I want to work on something special for you guys that's kind of got this theme. I'm thinking about it at the moment. I'm always thinking about it and how I can package that up so it becomes very unique to you guys. And it's, you can share in it being your mix. And that's really what collaboration's about. I'm sure we'll work on some artwork, and we're making the format different, and we're trying to work together. This is not a commercial project we're working on. We know it's not. we're fans and we're very keen, but yeah, I hope it's going to be great. I know it will be good. That's not a big-headed thing. I think it's the right collaboration of people, and I'm really honored to kind of that you guys said yeah to the idea.
Yeah, no, bro, we're down. We're super stoked, and this is perfect. We're coming up literally right on an hour right here. So I think for any episode, especially a first episode, it went super smooth, and on top of that, more importantly, like I learned a lot, and I know our listeners will too. So thank you so much for joining us today, bro.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Yeah, keep going, guys. I love Super Progressive, and I can't wait to see what other guests and stories you guys curate and give us all.
Yeah, and if you're listening, definitely follow Danny's Progressive House UK on Instagram. It's one of our favorites. A lot of good post photography mixes coming from him. He's like super connected, super generous with his time. So he's been, just a huge help for what we're doing over here. So thanks a lot, bro. And we'll definitely talk again soon.
My pleasure. Take care. Thanks.
All right. See you, man.